And we learned this morning that Virginia's Attorney General Mark Herring ending reciprocity agreements with 25 states here in Virginia. Dave Adams is the Legislative Affairs Director with the Virginia Shooting Sports Association. He joins us on the program now to talk about this. Dave, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Kim. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well, and I guess Merry Christmas from Attorney General Mark Herring to gun owners, not only in Virginia but around the country.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Grinch who stole gun rights.
So the Attorney General today, again, announcing that 25 of the 30 states that Virginia has reciprocity with, including North Carolina, which borders Virginia, and Pennsylvania, not too far to our north, along with a lot of other states, no longer will Virginia grant reciprocity because Attorney General Herring says that severing the out-of-state agreements can prevent people, this is from the Washington Post, can prevent people who may be dangerous or irresponsible from carrying a concealed weapon. In a statement provided to the Washington Post, he said, "To me, this is a common-sense step that can help make Virginians and our law enforcement officers safer by ensuring that Virginia's laws on who can and cannot carry a concealed handgun are applied evenly, consistently, and fairly."
What would be common sense is if he had backed that up with some actual data that showed that people that came from states that had permits and came to Virginia actually committed crimes. Fact is, he can't do that. This is just a blatant political move. He's able to find something that they can do that doesn't require legislative approval, and so he's gone for the low-hanging fruit. And amazingly enough, one of the first states that we ever had a reciprocity agreement with, the state of Tennessee, is on that list of states that he will now no longer recognize. And, you know, there was a time when it was hard to get reciprocity agreements because Virginia made it tough. And if Tennessee could pass it back then, what's changed that they can't do it now?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the states, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Delaware, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Minnesota, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, North Dakota, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. So only West Virginia, Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas, and Utah maintain reciprocity with Virginia now because of the Attorney General's moves. Now, we have seen today as well, Dave, several members of the House speak out publicly about this, but legislatively, is there anything that the legislative branch could do in response to the Attorney General's actions?
The legislature could change the law currently the way it was passed, and this is interesting. It was passed back in 1997 when the Democrats controlled both the House and the state Senate, that they could take the ability of the Attorney General to enter into these agreements. Currently, the Attorney General, with consultation from the state police, enter into these agreements. They could change which agency does that. But, you know, agency heads are appointed by the governor. So I'm not really sure that we get any change as long as we get Terry McAuliffe sitting in the governor's seat.
And, of course, Virginia's next election's 2017. Governor McAuliffe will not be running for re-election. You've got a one-term limit in the state of Virginia. And I assume that now, does that apply only to the governor, Dave, or can Attorney General Mark Herring, can he run for Attorney General again, or would he have to run for a new office?
That's a good question. Actually, both the lieutenant governor and the attorney general can run for re-election. In fact, Herring has already deferred to the lieutenant governor so that there won't be a nomination fight between the two of them in 2017. Herring's announced he's going to run for re-election to the AG's office, and the current lieutenant governor is going to run for governor from the Democrats.
Oh, well, that's nice and orderly.
Yeah. Similar to what Bob McDonnell and Bill Bolling did back in 2008 when they agreed that McDonnell would run for governor and Bolling would run for re-election to the lieutenant governor's office. They agreed that that would be the way it would be done in 2009. So
interesting. I guess, you know, being a state where you only get one term, you've probably got to have those types of agreements with potential candidates. Otherwise, every 4 years it could devolve into everybody running the primary. But between now and in 2017, then Dave, do you see any relief here, or do you think that that this is maybe the start of more actions by Terry McAuliffe, by the Attorney General, to try to go after the gun laws in the state wherever they can?
Oh, I definitely think that's the case, that they're going to go everywhere they can. He's already done it with open carry and concealed carry in state buildings with his executive order. And, I mean, he knew well that if a Republican came into office after him, that they could do away with that executive order and change that rule. And a new attorney general could come in and establish new reciprocity agreements. But, you know, that's not what gun owners should have to deal with. We shouldn't have to deal with the rules changing every 2 or 3 years. And these are reciprocity agreements with states that have their own rules for concealed carry permits. If someone violates the law, their permits are revoked, and there has been no proof that anyone coming into the state with a concealed carry permit has committed any crimes. You know, now the Washington Post quoted a hearing as saying, you know, they can always apply for a Virginia out-of-state permit, but they shouldn't have to spend extra money if they already had a permit that was recognized by Virginia.
Well, that's true. And, you know, to that end, Dave, I mean, again, Virginia is an open carry state, correct?
That's correct.
So any one of these concealed carry holders from another state could still come to Virginia. They can still carry their firearm. They're just going to have to carry it openly and not carry it concealed.
And you're probably right that we're probably going to see a lot more of that, especially from people out of state now as they come in to visit Virginia.
Okay, so what is the practical impact of this, Dave?
Well,
other than to make it.
Question, and that's,
no, go ahead.
And I was going to say that's probably a good question, and one that they probably didn't even think about. They were going for the quick press hit before Christmas, and without thinking about the logic either way on either side of it. Whether they were actually catching criminals or preventing criminals from doing something, or rather people were going to find a way around it, a way that they probably don't like even more than concealed carry.
Again, talking with Dave Adams, Legislative Affairs Director for the Virginia Shooting Sports Association, about the move by Attorney General Mark Herring, removing right to carry reciprocity with 25 of the 30 states that Virginia has reciprocity with. Now, this goes into effect not immediately, Dave, but February the 1st. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Well, that's going to be after the Virginia Assembly begins its 2016 session?
That's correct. And, I mean, we've already seen, you mentioned it, that we've seen members of the House of Delegates come out and trash the decision by the Attorney General, Scott Lingenfelter, Todd Garrett, both of them pro-gun members of the House of Delegates. And, you know, Scott Lingenfelter has had what I think is probably the best quote. He said, you know, if the Attorney General was really interested in safety and security, he'd have gone ahead and contacted the states that had problems that he didn't like or that whose, you know, rules were problematic, and would have sat down and worked out those things rather than just summarily tearing up the reciprocity agreement, which means there's a number of those states who require their permits to be recognized before they recognize Virginia's. So now if I travel to Florida, Louisiana, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, or Wyoming, my permit is now no longer good in their states either.
Dave Adams, listen, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. Thank you so much for your time, and I really hope we can talk to you again. In the meantime, have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, sir.
Same to you and everybody at NRA News, Cam.
Thank you, sir. Dave Adams with us here on the from the Virginia Shooting Sports Association, with us here on NRA News, Cam and Company.